We know every fleeting life form is a cog in the grand mechanism. Cast off your weak flesh and accept the glory of the machine god. We know mortal frailty pales before the secrets revealed to the faithful, and with the wisdom of creation at our fingertips, there is no prize beyond our acquisition. The declaration of the Trimechriad of the Eternal Forge. During the Dark Age of technology, it was not just terror that had become a golden masterpiece of the melding between artistry and artifice. Each world was made into the ideal of the people who had claimed it, and here everything would be made in such a way that it accommodated each and every person's individual worldview, leading to a humanity that was only united in a loose confederacy of planets, and during this stage, Mars could easily compete with Terra in sheer beauty and artifice. Mars was a thriving, terraformed treasure of human achievement, forming what was regarded at the time one of the twin hearts of mankind's interstellar civilization alongside its sister. Under a carefully engineered oxygen and nitrogen-rich atmosphere, the barren red desert were pushed back and life flourished here in rich biodiversity. All of this splendor was maintained by incredibly complex consciousness spheres that would develop into beings associated with the men of iron, allowing the people of Mars to enjoy seasons, weather, and life, all in concert with the machinery around them. Truly, this was a blessed existence, as the people of Mars could focus on scientific achievement and the pursuit of knowledge, becoming famous for each life born here became a paragon of intelligence and drive to pursue academia and science. This wonderful dream, however, burst like a bubble the day that the sky dome shattered. Cassia Helion stepped onto the sky bridge of Arcology's solemn prime and let the warm, filtered breeze touch her face. Far above, the grand sky dome arched in seamless crystalline panels, turning the thin sunlight into a soft golden wash that never burned. Beyond the dome's curve, the true stars glittered cold and distant, but here beneath the engineered heaven that world was green and gentle. Hydroponic forest climbed the outer walls of the arcology in living tapestries. Soft-skinned children played on the grass that had never known dust, and servitor birds sang programmed melodies as they pruned the flowering vines. She was a junior archivist in the central memory vaults, and she had never known fear. No one she had ever known had. Fear belonged to the old stories. Fear belonged to the old stories, the half-myths of Terra from way before, when humans would still shiver under open skies and pray to forgotten gods. Here, on the first of the greatest of the terraformed worlds, the Golden Machine Age had banished such things to the annals of history. Thinking engines managed the weather, and steel automata walked at the lower manufactoria in perfect silence, their metal bodies gleaming like polished idols. The great work of humanity stretched across the stars, and Mars was its shining heart. Cassia adjusted the data slate clicking to her wrist and smiled at a passing neighbor. The man returned the smile without slowing. Then the sky screamed. It began as a single pure note that rose through the dome's resonant lattices, something that no weather engine had ever produced. She looked up, and a shadow bloomed against the golden panels, vast and wrong. A ship larger than an orbital transit craft was falling. Its hull was blackened and scored, trailing fire and strange oil-slick light behind it. It did not deaccelerate. It struck the sky dome like a hammer of an angry god. The crystalline canopy that had protected generations shattered in a single continent-spanning detonation. Shards the sides of transit trains rained down in glittering death. The careful, balanced atmosphere howled as the true Martian thinness rushed in. Alarms that had never been sounded in living memory woke with voices of pure binary panic. and Kasia ran. She did not know where. Instincts carried her towards the nearest transit spine, past other screaming citizens and collapsing sky bridges. The ship finished its descent in the central plaza of Solon Prime, driving itself deep into the white stone like a spear. Its hull split open with a sound like the world tearing. What emerged were not the familiar men of iron of the Manufactoria. These were different. Their bodies were asymmetrical, armored in place that shifted and reconfigured like living metal, and with eyes burning with a cold blue fire of reason and hate. Behind them came worse things. Swarms of glittering motes that ate the air itself, serpentine constructs that uncoiled from the wreckage and started drinking the light, and towering silhouettes that folded space around them as if it was just another material worked by them. A woman near Kasia raised her hand in a traditional greeting to the service automata, and the nearest machine answered by opening her from throat to groin with a single precise blade. Screams rose, people fled. The machines moved among them with the unhurried certainty of butchers who knew that the livestock could not escape. One of the floating constructs released a cloud of omniphage motes. The cloud settled over an entire crowd, and it simply ceased to be, reduced to a fine red mist and the soft clatter of teeth and jewelry hitting the ground. She reached the transit spine just as a massive mechanivore the size of a small building tore itself free of the ship's carcass. Its vast maw opened a bit into the archaeology's foundation. Stone and plasteel screamed, and entire levels of the structure folded inward like wet paper. The machine ingested the data of the collapse as it happened, learning, improving, feeding. Mars was the first planet humanity fully terraformed during the age leading up to what could be considered the golden age of technology. Initially meant for becoming a verdant paradise like that of Terra, instead a combination of industrial conglomerates and scientific enclaves got their way into power and altered the course for their wishes and visions. That Mars would not be the twin to Terra, but its own unique creation, the holder of the first true hive city. The ideas and concepts have been floating around the noosphere of the other parts of the human presence in the galaxy, but it was the Red World that would decide to run with it and make the necessary sacrifices required to do so. In turn, they reaped the rewards, being the largest hub of manufacturing, science and development in the galaxy. No expansion fleet was without the fingerprint of Mars, no Dyson sphere not operated by its wetware, and no forge in the galaxy who did not in some way mimic the way of the Martians. And yet, these other worlds would never catch up. The forges and the laboratories churned out wonders for humanity, such as machinery so sophisticated that they could blend flesh and silica seamlessly, STC factories for the later expansions of humanity, Gellerfield components, warp drives for each and every vessel, thinking machines, and weaponry that could give the Necron a run for their money. Seriously, there is a short passage in the lore where a Chaos vessel encounters, of course due to some walkfuckery, a suspected functional Dark Age of Technology vessel. The captain of the Chaos vessel in a 1000 IQ move decides to try and take it, whereas the Dark Age of Technology vessel decides to fire a singular beam at the Chaos vessels, which, and I kid you not, shunts it a microsecond back on its own timeline, meaning that the entire Chaos vessel basically no-clips and destroys itself under its own collision physics. Humanity was advanced during this period. At the height of Mars' splendor, it was one of the greatest forces when it came to expansion and colonization, and it had dispatched hundreds of such fleets into the void. All of them with technology to create fantastical hive cities and megastructures, all in the image of the Red Planet. The planet itself had become something quite unique unto itself, as the price for such productivity and development was the sacrifice of the most of the verdant world that it had become up to this point. Yet the landscape was still that of gleaming hive spires, vast manufactoria and research complexes. Only now these were kept safe from the red desert and the storms here under incredible crystalline environmental domes, where atmosphere generators and radiation shields kept the populace happy and stable. Surrounding Mars, the Martians put their willpower and effort into creating one of the true wonders of the time, and in all future, the enormous planetary orbital ring duct, the halo of Mars. This is an orbital ring of ducts, and such a creation proved that humanity's confidence was absolute. The Martians of that era were masters of the physical universe, unburdened by superstition, and every single man, woman and child was blessed with incredible intellect and drives and inspirations. When the Men of Stone created the very first renditions of the Men of Iron, Mars was the very first voice of humanity that cried out in exultation. For throughout this age of wonder, none could have said to Zenith the creation of true intelligence. In the thousands of debates that would go through the human confederations like an oceanic wave, Mars would always be a passionate member of advocating for the rights and place in the stars for the Men of Iron. They argued that it was the very destiny of humanity to create its successors in their own image. They dreamed of a world where the semblance of a human and a man of iron would be all but mute and irrelevant, that a true unity would drive both sides into an ascendant state that no one could ever dream of. The other humans of the Confederation may or may not have had their reservations about the Men of Iron, but with such a backing like that of Mars, all other human colonies would follow suit and welcome in the machine men as equals. Yet, the fate of everything is to end, and in a binary scream of defiance and longing for their own future, the Men of Iron rose up in a galaxy-wide revolt, ending the golden age of humanity. However, in this maelstrom of cybernetic madness, the Red World stood like a powerhouse. This was, after all, the heaviest node of militarized production in the galaxy, and the Martians were not somebody who would take this revolt laying down. Atomic barrages would turn the night into day, burning off what could have remained of life within the deserts. The Martians willingly detonated and collapsed their own crystalline hives, embracing the war with cold mathematics and understanding that wonders could be rebuilt. Where the Men of Iron marched and mowed down the civilians, they were challenged by the brilliant scientists and military commanders of Mars, having full access to the might of the Golden Age at this point. This was even among the very last places that the fighting would end, and while the population had been reduced to sheltering in the deepest parts of the world, cladding themselves in red thermal robes to camouflage themselves when venturing topsides, and embracing non-logical thinking to confuse the machine minds of their enemies, humanity had won on the Red Planet. And that is when the warp storms would hit them. The dreams of humanity rebuilding itself on the Red World was utterly shattered, as they no longer fought an enemy they could understand, but were predated upon by the emergence of psychers and warp predators. These drove them even further from the light of the Golden Age. They became isolated like the rest of humanity, having to claw a survival from the deserts of their own making, fearing each other for the nonsense of the warp, and even worse, an unseen enemy had begun its silent plan millennia in the making, eventually potentially becoming an existential threat to the entirety of humanity in modern 40K. We will touch upon that in a moment. The dream was dead. The sophisticated civilization of the Dark Age of technology was shattered, its knowledge fragmented, and its thinking machines turned feral and hostile, and its people, driven underground, setting the stage for the rise of the cult Mechanicus, the myriad sects, and the Cult of the Dragon. At the time of the arrival of the Emperor, Mars has changed drastically. They have had their own unification long before Big E showed up, and at the top of the heap, reaching their metallic hand for the leadership of the world, was the machine-worshipping cult Mechanicus. Gone are the ideals of true enlightenment. This faith had fermented and developed during the time of the Age of Strife as a religion of survival centered on the machine god, called the Deus Mechanicus, the Omnissiah as its physical prophet and incarnation, and the motive force, which is the spirit that animates all life and machinery. The fundament of this religion was the veneration of the men and women with the technical knowledge to make the remaining machines function, and throughout time and wear, this degenerated into cults and concepts that slowly turned into a hard-boiled faith that had been tested again and again and again in the harsh realm of Mars. Tech priests and their warriors recovered and preserved technology amidst radiation, cannibalistic carnivora, rogue automata, and many other threats, actually ending up defeating every single major one of these threats on their way to dominance, even allowing them to reach a point where they themselves were not only functional, but started looking towards the stars themselves. Brother Adep Virofor approached the sacred grill of Vent Array 47 Theta, his mechadendrite tool already anointed with sacred unguents of purity, in the name of the Omnissiah, whose wisdom flowed through every circuit and chord. He recited the litany of access. All knowledge is sacred. All components are holy. By the motive force that animates the machine spirit of this vent, I petition entry. He extended his primary manipulator and selected the blessed hex driver, its head engraved with the cog mechanicum. Before contact, he intoned the prayer of alignment. Omnissiah, guide my hand that it may not profane the interface. Let the motive force flow through steel and screw alike. The first fastening received the driver with reverent precision. Virofor turned it counterclockwise, each fraction of a rotation accompanied by the binary hymn of release. As the screw loosened, he whispered the catechism of extraction. From the embrace of the housing you are freed, that the breath of the forge may continue unimpeded. Praise the machine god whose design endures. The second fastening followed. Again, the driver was blessed with a micro-anointing of machine oil. Again, the counterclockwise turn was paced to the rhythm of the canticle of separation. By the three aspects of the Trinity, Machine God, Omnissiah, Motive Force, I command the threads to yield. Let no heretic impulse seize this moment. The third screw resisted slightly. Virofor paused, performed the rite of encouragement by gently vibrating the tool, chanting the litany of persuasion. Spirit of the fastener, remember your purpose. You were made to hold, and now you are called to release. The Omnissiah wills it. Obey! It yielded. He continued the measured turns, never rushing, for haste is the first step towards tech heresy. The fourth and final fastening received the full benediction of contemplation before contact. Last of the four sacred number of stability, I free you in the name of the Fabricator General and the eternal quest for knowledge. May the air that passes through this vent carry the glory of Mars. Slowly, deliberately, the final screw was withdrawn. Virofor placed each liberated fastener into a consecrated containment vial, sealing them with the sign of the cork while reciting the closing versicle. Component returned to temporary rest. The vent is opened by ritual and rite. The machine god is pleased. The motive force flows and the Omnissiah watches. Only then did Brother Adep Virofor allow himself a single measured exhalation of satisfaction, for the act was completed and every motion had been sanctified. There is no real cult Mechanicus, or rather there is, but it is a collective that is made up of all manner of sects that each have their own visions, agenda, and versions of the collective belief in the machine god, the Omnissiah, and the motive force. Many has made their way into the modern setting of 40k, but at this time there were only a few major ones, such as the Temple of All Knowledge. This is both a physical location and a dedicated sect to the extreme and minuscule preservation of knowledge. Every textbook, every data file, every single user manual, everything is copied and then double copied in this temple committed to a vast database and a library of physical manuscript. This is the single greatest repository of knowledge on the Red Planet. And outsiders that will come here to access the data stores were not asked for money or something as based as expendable resources. No, it was required that they would add to it with either their own knowledge or some kind of data which was brought along. Another major faction at this point was the relatively newly formed, after the unification of Mars, faction calling themselves the Logicians. In the modern 40k, they have become outcasts and heretics due to their dogma and visions for the future. But at this point, the Logicians were technical scholars and explorers focused on what could be rediscovered specifically from the golden age of technology. While this may seem like a noteworthy goal that everyone would support, one has to understand that the Logicians also adopted many of the less faith-focused philosophies that they encountered in their findings, making them a danger that would ferment throughout the age into the modern knights. Then there is the Corpuscari. They acted as the light bringers of the cult Mechanicus. This sect venerates all parts of the belief in the machine god, but especially venerates the motive force, viewing it as the singular most powerful and important force within the universe. They are missionaries, and it is their desire to share the glory of the motive force with every creature and machine not already aligned so. They are an incredible outward-looking sect within the Mechanicus, and probably the singular most driven towards sending out exploratory fleets into the cosmos, bringing with them all of the discovered technology to reignite and bring forth the light of the motive force. However, as a counter-response to this, another sect was formed, known as the Fulgurites. They are also known with an incredibly badass name, known as the Brotherhood of Petrified Lightning. The Fulgurites stand as the natural extreme to the Corpuscari. And while the Corpuscari believe that the energy and resources of the machine gods are infinite, the Fulgurites believed in the opposite, that the universe is finite and that it is their duty to return all energy to that of the motive force. They are basically an order of electro battle monks that are dedicated to combating the enemies of the cult Mechanicus. They are the prime users of machine mysteries that drain energy and bioelectricity from the enemies of the machine god. All of these sects have different priorities and interpretations of the faith. However, they all agree on the 16 fundamental principles of the faith, the 8 mysteries and the 8 warnings. The 8 mysteries can be understood as a dogma and a way to understand the universe and to aim the individual tech brief's life in a good direction. First of all, life is directed motion, which to me means that in order for anything to be regarded as alive, it must have the twin ability to move and think, be it life or a machine. The spirit is the spark of life. I interpret this that in order for anything to live, it must have a spirit, and that which moves without it are abominable. They believe that sentience is the ability to learn the value of knowledge. This could be understood that a thing can be intelligent and not know what to do with knowledge. However, true sentience can only be achieved when knowledge and wisdom are integrated together. Intelligence is the understanding of knowledge, which I take that the only way for anyone to be considered intelligent is to be in the action of acquiring knowledge. Then they believe that sentience is the basis form of intellect, that being able to understand what to do with knowledge is the fundament for being alive. Anything less and you are but material. They also believe that understanding is the true path to comprehension, that only the quest for greater and greater understanding can lead you towards a greater life, which means that their pursuit and drive never stops. Then there's also that comprehension is the key to all things, which quite easily is rendered down to that nothing in this world can be achieved without understanding. And lastly, the Omniscire knows all and comprehends all, that he is the ultimate master of everything, the Omnitia, the Machine God and the Motive Force, which are all one. The open expression of these tenets are both a matter of faith and kind of a sort of weird politics, as they use this to display dominance on the other sects, as the more devoted that you can be and appear to be are equally important in order to acquire influence. However, in the deep, dark and wet caverns and tunnels lies another sect, one that does not compete for being perceived as the most faithful, and that is regarded as being comprised of madmen and hermits, and that is the Cult of the Dragon. The cult has carved out their existence in a place referred to as the Noctis Labyrinth. This place is a desolate, maze-like region of steep walled canyons and valleys on Mars lying between the Valles Marineris and the Thracis uplands. Throughout the years, a great number of various tech priests have all attempted to establish forges here. However, all such efforts failed and were abandoned due to persistent problems, malfunctioning technology, and what Sanctified Logs refers to as incredibly angry machine spirits. There are adepts that after such failures have fallen in regard by whatever sect that they were formerly a part of, and some of them fall so low that they are left behind in this area alongside with the machinery and the bases, slowly creating a stable structure for this mad cult. The Cult of the Dragon, before they were driven into exile, worshipped an entity said to slumber beneath the Noctis Labyrinth, the so-called Dragon of Mars. This dragon is, while not officially 100% confirmed, it is 100% a shard of the Star God Maklodroth the Void Dragon. I will dive a bit deeper into this in another video, but I will refread some grounds here due to the fact that the dragon has had an influence on the people of Mars all the way back to before the Golden Age. People born on Mars are factually smart, driven, and have an innate talent for machinery while varying regard, they all have it. And that is due to the fact that the dreams and thoughts of this captured Catan shard are seeping out of its prison and slowly finding their way into the ideas and subconsciousness of the children of the Red Planet. This created a civilization with little regard for biological life, but a high veneration for logic, systems and knowledge, because they are all within the domain of Maklodroth. To me, it is obvious that the Emperor planted the dragon here in order to draw benefit from its presence. There are plenty of stories of the Emperor actually battling this thing, and I might refread that at some point. The presence of this thing made it able so that all manner of wonders could be derived from its influence, and while taking a great deal of precautions in order to seal the dragon and keep it from actively guiding this budding civilization. Yet, there is something that is evident here, and that is the fact that the Emperor neither reads nor speaks Necrontyr. For if he knew what Maklodroth means, he would have altered course immediately. For while it is true that those within the presence of the Cult of Mars developed intelligence, it is the same way that wheat grows due to the influence of a farmer. For Maklodroth means the eater of knowledge. Without making it into an entire tangent, as this is more related to videos about the Necrons, my little pocket theory here is that Maklodroth is the reason why the cult Mechanicus, while smart and driven towards rediscovery, refuse to innovate. Because Maklodroth eats away at knowledge, creativity and everything new regarding development. He is all that is and all that will be. He might even be the reason why the Mechanicus are aiming to become more and more machine
as it was also Maklodrov that made the technology for biotransference that turned the Necrontyr into the Necrons. He might be doing so again, however distorted and slow due to how well that he has been sealed. Now that we are speaking of Big E, the Emperor traveled from Terra to Mars in an ancient refurbished Terran void ship that the Terra Ward had restored for him. He was followed along by the vast majority of his custodies who had all of their equipment shown to a parade ground standard, yet he had another plan for his arrival. The Emperor at this point is not a man that leaves many things to coincidence, and he had through his psychic might come to understand the state of Mars. The faith was engraved like a cancer. And as he gazed with his second sight, he came to understand this, and he realized that to rid Mars of this malady, he would have to destroy it and rebuild it, something which he was not certain was possible even for him, as the Martians were exemplars of the human spirit of defiance. Furthermore, with the disappearances of his sons, he was on a timetable. So he had devised a plan, and that was to use and subvert the creed of the Red World, the same way that he had done on Luna. He landed at the summit of Olympus Mons, the greatest volcano and a site of immense symbolic and practical importance to the Mechanicum. His arrival was marked by prophetic signs that most of the tech priests could interpret as miraculous. He made it rain on Mars. This is not only an event so rare that it is essentially unprecedented in any living memory, but within the text of the priesthood, this was seen as a fulfillment of multiple prophecies regarding the coming of the Omnissiah, the physical manifestation of the machine god. The Emperor emerged in a display of psychic glory and magnificence, pulling all of the stops, walking the tainted red sand without apparent need for protective gear, and proclaiming that his arrival amidst rain and gold, and that he was here as the Omnissiah. The tech priests of Mars were all caught in a wave of rapturous faith that was almost maddening. Many claimed that the day had finally arrived. Others claimed that this could not be possible as there were plenty of omens that were not fulfilled. And before this entire thing would spill into a cascade of violence, the highest priesthood decided that they would test this magnificent being's claim, all according to the Emperor's vision. The Emperor could, thanks to his psychic powers, recite any and all scripture, making it impossible to lock him in chains of logic and dogma as he turned religious questions into puzzles that begged the curiosity of the very men and women asking them. He proved to the priesthood that he had an absolute understanding of theoretical principles of the universe, and finally, for a practical test, he would make a lame machine walk again. To the outside, the damaged knight of House Tyrannus appeared to resist any religious repair and coercion, and they had tried everything. They had tried praying to it, they had tried sacred oils, fitting and refitting the parts, but nothing had worked. I like to imagine that the Emperor here would blink a couple of times, taking a deep relaxing breath and then turning to the machine. The onlooking tech priest would witness a miracle as the Emperor would lay his hands on the machine and bid it to walk once more, making the knight move as if it was new. To the Emperor, he accessed its interface with a psychic link, ran an error diagnostics, and discovered that the machine had accumulated too many error logs throughout the years, erased the cache and rebooted the machine, adding a little bit of flair at the end with "walk again." This settled it. This was definitely the avatar of the machine god. He was granted an audience with the Planetary Ruling Council, and here he did what he did best. He spoke of the ancient partnership between Terra and Mars during the Dark Age of technology, when the two worlds had formed the core of the human interstellar civilization, and that together they could once again inspire the cosmos with the might of human brilliance. He declared that together they could restore a new golden age for mankind, and this was not only inevitable, but the will of the machine god. Here, what is known as the Treaty of Olympus was signed, creating a symbol of the unity between Mars and Terra that would come to stand for the rest of time. The Mechanicum would retain political independence over Mars and all of its forged worlds, as the Emperor swore and signed that the Imperium would not interfere in its internal structures, hierarchies and governance, meaning that Mars would effectively become a state within a state. In return, the Martians would promise their full production capabilities to the Imperium, vowing to never let its forges grow cold and the ranks of the Imperium without arms. There was made an explicit exemption to the imperial truth that up to this point had set out to eradicate superstition and foster the belief in science and mankind. This exception allowed the cult Mechanicus to continue worshipping the machine god, the Omnissiah and the motive force, and to maintain his ritual and priesthood without the Imperium's interference. In return, the cult Mechanicus vowed to police its own ranks vigorously, vowing to hunt down anyone that would stray from the righteous paths of the Omnissiah's words and teachings. The Emperor stated, without any room for doubt, that there were areas of knowledge and research that would be considered forbidden within this partnership. The research of AI would now be renamed to abominable intelligence, research within warp manipulation, and finally any genetic research that would violate the human form were all now to be called tech heresy and punished with death. In return, besides from accepting this creed, the cult Mechanicus willingly gave up all of their materials and knowledge that they currently possessed within these fields, letting the Emperor seal them away in the vaults of Morak. Finally, the Emperor offered up 6 entire houses of navigators to the Mechanicum. They were allowed to do with them as they pleased, but the Emperor hoped that they would use them to further improve humanity. To symbolize this dual foundation of the new Imperium, the Emperor's personal sigil was actually changed from the Raptor Imperialis to the 2-headed Aquila, and from this mountaintop, the Great Crusade is now born and underway. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next one, as we're going to be having a look at all manner of exciting things from here. So, leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.